In this video, we'll talk about the anatomy of a Genero program. In other words, what are the various parts of a program and where do those parts come from? What types of files are we going to be working with? Let's start with the development machine. Up at the top here, top left, we can see the source files that you will be working with. The first one's a 4GL file. The 4GL is simply the standard module source file that you'll be actually typing the code into. When that is compiled, it will become a 42M file. So a successfully compiled 4GL file becomes a 42M file. That 42M file is then used in the running of the program. Now, a .per file and a .4fd file are simply source files for developing the form or the screens for your program. The .per is a text definition. The 4fd would be a form definition that you develop in the Form Designer product, which is part of Genero Studio, so a graphical representation of the form. Again, those are the form source file types. And a .string file or .str is the definition where you might, if you're using the string mapping feature, you might define the various values for your string objects, and then when that's compiled, it's a 42S file that's used in the running of your program for mapping the string file to the program depending on which string file you're using. Now the 42F file here in the middle there is the translated version of the form. So regardless of if you've developed your form as a text file, as a .per file, or in the Form Designer product, the compilation or translation process will give you a 42F file, which is the XML representation of the form. There's also something that we call resource files, and these are things like 4AD files, 4ST files, also separate small XML files that you may develop. And those are files that are read into the program at some point to define things such as action default information, styles that you might be defining to apply to different objects in your program, those sorts of things. So those resource files are XML files that are, again, a part of the program and read in as a part of the program at some point. Now when we look at the production side, you would see that your resource files and your compiled files will all be a part of your production environment. And a 42R file, these small little blue boxes here representing the runnable program, which is referencing those compiled files and referencing through those compiled files those resource files. So once you've launched the program, the dynamic virtual machine or DVM is then communicating out with the client, and then the Genero client software, depending on what type of client it is interpreting that information to build and run the program for the client. So that communication is happening there. So the 42R is simply the runnable program, the reference point for the files that you have compiled and linked to it. Now this particular diagram just shows the same information, your development machine here. You have your production information or files, the resource files and the compiled files on the various production machines, possibly all different operating systems, all being accessed by different clients. And again, same setup. Now let's break apart the 42R. We said that the 42R is the runnable program. It has all the modules linked to it, as well as what you would execute when you run a Genero program. And the first thing that you would uncover is that it references 42M files, and again the 42Ms are the compiled 4GL files. So again, your source code that you've written for the program, everything from your main block to all the functions to the windows opening and closing and all of that good stuff, database connection, etc. Is compiled into your 42M files, and you most likely will have multiple 42M modules. The 42F files are the XML representation of the form, and the way that you would get those files would be through either designing your screens in the Form Designer, and you would have 4FD files that are compiled to the 42F, or you would have PER files, which are text definitions of a form or a screen, and those also would go through a compilation process for to become a 42F file. So either way, doesn't matter how you define it, the result is going to be the same as a 42F file. And then you also have resource files, things like style files, action files, small bits of XML that you might have written externally from the program. And those are going to be referenced from the 42M modules that have been compiled from your 4GL. And there's one other that's also read at runtime, which is the FGL profile file, which is a runtime configuration file that has entries related to the running of the program, maybe database connection information, particular settings, etc., for the running of your program. So in this video, we took a look at the anatomy of a Genero program, breaking apart what types of files we use and how those work within a Genero program.